Family from Easton, Maryland buried a war hero today, 43 years after he was shot down over the Soviet Union. Channel 9's Joan Gartland has more on the man and the still painful memories from the forgotten war.
The members of the Air Force Honor Guard who carried Captain John Dunham's body from the Fort Myer Chapel were not even born when he was shot down and killed over the Soviet Union 43 years ago. For 40 of those years, the Air Force navigator, who was just 24 years old when he died, was listed as missing in action.
When they went down, I never flew another airplane.
75-year-old Clyde Miles of Panama City, Florida, was supposed to be the pilot on the RB-29 on the day Dunham and 7 others were shot down, but he was grounded by a broken foot. What will you be thinking about today when you see John's casket?
All the years we were together. And the whole crew. And that he represents them all.
64-year-old Mel Renshaw of Millersville, Maryland, was supposed to be the gunner on the flight that day.
He's at rest in his own country now, where he belonged, and I felt good for him there.
Dunham's family and friends did not learn his body had been recovered until 2.5 years ago, when Russia opened its archives to U.S. investigators. At today's funeral was Vasily Saiko, a former Russian sailor who had taken Dunham's Naval Academy ring off his finger and who had led U.S. investigators to his gravesite in eastern Russia.
I am happy that this man finally found his native land, and he rests in peace over here.
An Air Force chaplain said, "This is the day we bring a hero home." A B-52 bomber flying overhead and the other military honors were the rituals Dunham's wife Mary and daughter Suzanne had waited for 43 years. Seeing his flag-draped coffin, they said, finally let them put closure on his death.
I've also been hugged by a lot of people who knew him that I didn't know exist, and I feel that the love that I felt they had for him and touching his casket has told me a lot about the kind of person he was. And I guess I feel kind of whole for the first time. I know who my dad is now, and he's a man I would have been very proud to know.
Captain Dunham is the first American serviceman shot down over Russia during the Cold War years of the 50s and 60s, whose remains have been repatriated to the U.S. as a result of improved relations between the two countries. The Dunhams say they feel blessed and hope the families of other MIAs may find the same peace. Joan Gartland, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
In Washington, D.C. at Arlington National Cemetery, another American military man finally got his due. After 40 long years, Captain John Dunham can rest in peace. His body was found 40 years after his plane was shot down over the Sea of Japan. Our Frank Graff is in Washington with the touching ceremony.
Captain John Dunham was a missing war hero until today. Now carried by caisson with full military honors, he joins the rest of Arlington National Cemetery's heroes 43 years after he disappeared over the Sea of Japan.
The grief is so great for so long, but not knowing what happened. And once you know what happened, then your mind can be a little clearer, at least my heart's a little better.
After we found out what happened and what happened to him, for years, for 40 years, I thought they were prisoners for sure.
The B-52 flying in tribute brought back painful memories to the men who didn't make that fateful flight, October 7th, 1952. Dunham was 24 years old, part of an 8-man reconnaissance mission when his B-29 was downed. The Soviets charged it violated their airspace, disavowed all knowledge of the crew. But Vasily Saiko wouldn't do that. The Soviet border guard on Yuri Island found Dunham's body and pulled off the Naval Academy ring from his finger, hoping to give it back to his family one day.
On one hand, of course, it was a sad ceremony, and on the other hand, I am happy that this man finally found his native land.
So one man's kindness in another land, in another time, the Cold War, ended 43 years of wondering and heartache for the family.
To me, it's a great sigh of relief. It's just such a relief to know that he is buried in his home country.
I've touched my dad's casket, and it's the first time I've ever seen him. Touching his casket has told me a lot about the kind of person he was.
Cold warriors, now friends. In Arlington National Cemetery, Frank Raff, WBAL 11 News.
Among the American soldiers who fell into Russian hands, Captain Dunham is the only soldier whose remains have been returned to the United States.
Dunham was 24 years old, part of an 8-man reconnaissance mission when his B-29 was down October 7th, 1952. The Soviets charged it violated their airspace, disavowed all knowledge of the crew. But Vasily Seiko couldn't do that. A Soviet border guard on Uri Island, he found Dunham's body and took the Naval Academy ring from his finger, hoping to give it to his family one day. He came to Arlington to say goodbye.
Родную и близких.
On one hand, of course, it was a sad ceremony. And on the other hand, I am happy that this man finally found his native land.
So one man's kindness on an island half a world away during another time, the Cold War, meant the end of 43 years of wondering and heartache for Dunham's family.
To me, it's a great sigh of relief. It's just such a relief to know that he is buried in his home country in Arlington, that after all the years of silence.
I've touched my dad's casket, and it's the first time I've ever seen him. And I've also been hugged by a lot of people who knew him that I didn't know exist, and I feel that the love that I felt they had for him and touching his casket has told me a lot about the kind of person he was.
At Arlington National Cemetery, Frank Raff, WBAL 11 News.